Denis Popovic, a military analyst, is joining our broadcast. Mr. Popovic, welcome.
Good morning.
Regarding the use of the Oreshnik missile during the latest massive Russian strike, in your opinion, what is the symbolic and military significance of this use?
The military significance is exactly zero. 3 garages in Bila Tserkva. I think the result speaks for itself. That is, an intercontinental ballistic missile worth several tens of millions of dollars, up to $100 million, is launched. And as a result, in the end, it destroys 3 garages in a garage cooperative. Well, maybe something like that is still possible in the Russian Federation. It's a bit a joke. I don't even want to analyze the results of this strike. That is, they are close to zero. In fact, they are zero. And the very point of intimidation, they are showing that they are ready to use even such a missile to intimidate the civilian population.
In your opinion, the fact that these submunitions, whose fall we just saw on the screen, landed specifically on a garage cooperative on the outskirts of Bila Tserkva, what does this say about the accuracy of this weapon, and how likely is it that this garage cooperative was actually the target of this strike?
If those 3 garages were the target of this strike, then the accuracy is absolute. If it was specifically those 3 garages, what they found there, perhaps a high-end luxury vehicle or whatever else caught their attention, I honestly don't know. Often it is quite difficult for me to say exactly what specific strategic objectives they were aiming at. In order to thoroughly evaluate and analyze the precise accuracy of this particular strike.
Well, sometimes very important decisions are made in garages. As we know, they like to threaten to strike decision-making centers. But seriously, in your opinion, the fact that Russia is likely increasing the use and production of missiles like the Oreshnik on the one hand, and on the other hand, we see that this weapon is not as dangerous as in particular Russian propaganda portrays it, or as Vladimir Putin himself tries to convince us. How do you see this, from the perspective of the actual scale of destruction these strikes cause on the ground? What does this change in terms of the logic of the missile threat that currently exists for Ukraine from the Russian Federation?
What is the Oreshnik actually intended for? The Oreshnik is not designed to use kinetic means of destruction. They are using it as a kinetic weapon. Because of this, its use on the territory of Ukraine in particular makes no sense at all. We see 3 garages. What happened in the Sibirsky district in the Lviv region when it was used in January is still unknown. No one knows why it was launched. In Dnipro, there was also minimal damage when it was first used against Ukraine in November 2024. This missile is designed to be used with a nuclear warhead. If there had been a nuclear warhead, the effect would have been completely different. We all understand this perfectly well. There are 36 warheads. If even 6 of them were equipped with nuclear warheads, the effect would have been completely different. Therefore, there is absolutely no point in talking about the Oreshnik as a kinetic weapon. If we were to consider the possibility that the enemy could have significantly ramped up the manufacturing and production of this specific weapon, well, yes, we can see that based on the historical fact that the very first missile was used on November 21st, 2024. The second missile was subsequently used on January 9th, 2026. And the third missile was eventually deployed for the 3rd time by May 4th. Theoretically, this could indicate that the enemy has increased its production. But here we need to look at the trend. If, for example, the 4th missile is used in 2 months, then obviously, yes, perhaps this production has been increased. But it makes no sense, no military sense, precisely for the reasons listed above.
At these moments, when Russia uses Oreshnik-type missiles, in your opinion, is it solely related to the production cycle of these missiles? So when they have them at their disposal, they launch them, but is the political or some symbolic goal from the Russian Federation actually more important here?
It's just a political PR component, nothing more.
The scale of the strike that Kyiv experienced this weekend from the Russian Federation, again, it was a combination of many different means, This attack is expensive in terms of the cost of producing these means. Impressive. In your opinion, is there reason to expect that such attacks will be repeated regularly? Does Russia have enough resources to use them with the same frequency, for example, a week, as has passed since the previous strike in the future?
A week. It is unlikely that such large-scale attacks will be repeated, but that they will be repeated at all. And specifically against Kyiv, I think that's beyond doubt. In principle, we can count the active use of ballistic missiles. This month, as far as I understand, there have been 2 such attacks. on May 14th and on the 24th. Last month, there were 3 such attacks with the use of ballistic missiles while drones are flying every day. Not every day against Kyiv, but every day across Ukraine. So that's roughly the frequency, an obvious sequence of 2 to 4 attacks per month with extensive use of ballistic missiles, which I think was to be expected from the Russian Federation. I mean, specifically with the use of ballistic missiles, such a wide range of ground targeting munitions, as was mentioned.
It's clear that such attacks have a psychological effect since the entire city didn't sleep. In addition, there is a lot of destruction with some civilian sites completely destroyed. For example, the Lukyanivsky market, which burned down completely. In Kyiv, museums, buildings, a missile that pierced the parking lot of an upscale residential complex in the city center. But in your opinion, from the perspective of military practical expediency, how do such strikes on the capital of Ukraine correlate, for example, with the fact that the Russian Federation is unable to advance on the front lines to the extent that would allow them to count on, say, capturing the Donbas by the end of this year?
These shellings have no military sense. Such attacks only make sense from the perspective of terrorizing the civilian population, destroying residential infrastructure, hitting architectural sites, and so on. What was destroyed? The market at Lukyanivka, the Kvadrat shopping and entertainment center, again at Lukyanivka. Where else did they hit? They destroyed buildings. Here we can see the consequences of the previous strike. The Kharkivsky district, although it also bears witness, it is quite telling. The enemy is striking specifically at residential buildings. So this is undoubtedly terror against the local population, and it is directed precisely at the local people, at civilians. It has no military purpose. It cannot have any impact on the situation at the front, on the front lines, on the ground. So right now we are seeing exactly this kind of attempt to put pressure on the local population, on us, on civilians in various cities, so that we would go to the military political leadership and start demanding that they accept the peace terms dictated by the Russian Federation. That's the only reason. And by the way, there have been such examples before. I gave an example related to the war between Iran and Iraq in the 1980s, in the last century. There was a period called the War of the Cities. There too, Iran and Iraq struck cities to put pressure on the local population. Here it is only the Russian Federation that does this. It strikes peaceful Ukrainian cities in order to put pressure on us, on Ukrainians. We strike military targets and oil industry facilities. This is to deprive Russia of its economic and military potential. We do not strike at local neighborhoods, but Russia is completely repeating the experience of Iran and Iraq.
As for our Ukrainian strikes on targets within the territory of the Russian Federation, in Russia they complain about drone attacks. Today, for the second time this week, drones attacked targets in Yaroslavl. Traffic towards Moscow was blocked, and it was loud in Belgorod as well. The local authorities report a missile attack. Parts of the city have lost electricity and water. There are also reports online about explosions in the temporarily occupied Crimea, in particular, near Simferopol. So far, the occupying authorities have not reported anything about the consequences. Mr. Popovich, based on your observations, what trends can be noted in the process of Ukrainian drones targeting resources that the Russian Federation needs to continue the war?
Strikes on logistics in the temporarily occupied Crimea are aimed at stopping the supply of what is necessary for the logistics of the military grouping that is currently being maintained there. That's the first point. Second, there are consecutive strikes on oil refineries, Russia's oil processing complexes, oil loading terminals, and on Russia's export potential. Strikes on enterprises that are connected to the military-industrial complex in one way or another. Such a set of targets exists today, and it is widespread because it covers the European territory of Russia, meaning all the way to the Urals, and all the targets that are now within the range of our Ukrainian drones are now a threat to the Russians. So I want to repeat once again, our targets are those facilities connected to the oil complex of the Russian Federation, the military-industrial complex of the Russian Federation, and the logistics necessary to support the Russian